Welcome back to the David's Door podcast. It feels good to be back. Thank you for tuning in. If you've been tuning in every day of the week, Tuesdays and Fridays, for my podcast episodes, you might have known that I wasn't here on Tuesday, and that was because I got super sick over the weekend. But we are back. I'm feeling good. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. It's going to be a really good one. I say that pretty much all the episodes because I really just enjoy talking about everything that we talk about here. It's genuinely the things I love to talk about. So if we're ever sitting, me and you, we're sitting across at a fire, or maybe like everybody's eating and like we're all hanging out or whatever, like this is my ideal conversation. So here we go. These types of things. Thank you for being here. I wanted to talk about spirituality as a whole. Spirituality, it hasn't always been this way, but I definitely, I don't know. One of the ways I see it is spirituality is another label. And it's another label that a lot of people use to identify their new ego. And so you hear this term like the ego, which is the version of ourselves that is narrating this story, the one that identifies with everything, thinks because B or because A happened, like because I grew up poor, I'm always going to be poor. That's your ego. That's not true. That's just something that has happened to you, and you're thinking that it's going to be something that continues to happen. And because you identify with it, you start creating those patterns unfolding in front of you to prove it to yourself. Now, your ego wants you to always feel like you need to grow, you need to improve, you need to do better, you're never enough, you're always one step away. Your ego is that part of you that is not okay being. It needs more. It needs to strive for something, it needs to reach. That's your ego. And there's nothing wrong with having a bit of an ego, that's okay. However, this is where it gets a little interesting. We're talking about spiritual ego. So you find the spiritual community, spirituality, even the pagan community, They develop this, all human beings develop ego. We have our ego. If we identify at all with being here as an individual version of ourselves, we have an ego. Because you're the whole thing pretending to be you. You know, we'll get into that later. But if you think you're just you, that's your ego, and that's okay. That's fine. No worries. However, when it comes to spirituality, there's this moment where people say, oh, I wake up. You know, and like I'll say I've had experiences. I've had two very profound experiences that have changed my perspective of reality completely. One of them brought me into a spiritual ego, and the other one showed me my spiritual ego. And now I live from that space, and I learn to harmonize with my ego, and I find what's authentic to me, what's moving me towards a direction that feels aligned, and what feels like it's holding me back or steering me towards a direction that's not aligned. Whatever aligned means for anybody, everybody's experience is different. But when it comes to spirituality overall, a lot of people think that you need to kill the ego, or that your ego dies, and now I'm a spiritual being. And that's just an illusion. You can't kill the ego because that's your death. When you die, your ego's gone. This is an egoic being. We're here with it. When you become spiritual, you wake up, a lot of people think like they become it, the one. You know, I'm more aware, more awakened, you know, and one of the biggest things is that the ego will use anything to feel important. It needs to feel important. You need to feel like you have a purpose, that there's a reason that you're special. Yeah. It feels so weird to hear that, because it's true. You know, we all want to feel like we're special. We want to feel like there's some particular reason, you know, and that's okay. You know, that's the egoic side of us. That's the one that wants, that feels like it needs something, you know. And even when you're stepping into the spiritual world, your ego is going to put on a spiritual mask. Now, the spiritual mask shows up in really interesting ways. I want to talk about this. I have some notes with me. A lot of people, you'll see, especially I travel. For those of you who don't know, I'm a full-time nomad. I travel all around the U.S. It's a wonderful thing. So blessed to have this life. It's a wonderful experience. But in my travels, I've met a lot of spiritual people, quote-unquote. I've met a lot of, quote-unquote, asleep people, which we'll be talking about that term here in a little bit. People of all types from all around the U.S., all around the world even. just in my life and all the movement that I've done, I've never been in one place very long. So you'll see in the spiritual community, pagan community, there's these people who need to be viewed as aware. They need to be viewed as present. They need to be viewed as the spiritual person, as a super spiritual being. They have to be viewed that way, almost to the point where it's like a show. It can look performative because some people are performing. Others are just being themselves, and you're being a judgmental person. So it's one of those things where discernment is key, but being yourself isn't going to be something that's forced. Judging other people as asleep is part of the ego trap. The thing is, everybody just is wherever they think they are. Is a very interesting part, because the thing is, I still use this term myself. It'd be like, oh, they're still asleep, they're still waking up, or like they just haven't woken up to what's really going on yet, or who they are. And the thing is, you know what? Maybe that's who they are. Their being is who they are, and they don't need anything else. They don't need to be anything different. They don't need to change. Nobody should do anything. We're just all being ourselves, and sometimes just because you don't think that they're being themselves authentically doesn't mean that it's true. It's just a thought. There's the people who always try to correct you or wake people up. Have you ever heard that, where you're like, oh, I can't wait to wake this person up, or oh, they're almost there, I'm gonna correct their journey. That's another ego thing too. It's another striving to feel important, to feel necessary, to feel like you're the higher being there. And the thing is, everyone's helping everyone wake up, whether you know it or not. We're all playing the role, whether you're aware, quote unquote, or not aware, whatever. We're all playing our roles in this reality as it's unfolding. All you need to do is be aware of it. Just sit back, be present, bring whatever self you, quote unquote, desire. There's people, now I identify, I use identities. This is one thing I'll talk about, is people who call themselves healers or guides. I call myself a guide. One important thing to know is that these are just labels. They're just words. I am me, and I notice when people work with me, or me and another person are with each other, we tend to talk about really deep things that end up leading to really profound experiences in both of our lives most of the time. And to me, I was like, wow, so when I am intentional about this, I can guide people to create these experiences. However, I'm not really in control. It's the intentions. The intentions must be met on all ends for an experience to be given. It's pretty much an interesting thing. But identities, people who identify too much. So one of those things, like me calling myself a guide, if you, for example, are like, you're not a guide, I'd be like, okay, whatever. You don't have to think I am. That's fine. Like, it's just a label. It's just a word. I don't actually need you to call me a guide or anything like that. It's the release of the attachment to the identity. Because identifiers, like things to help us organize and section things off, like, oh, look, that's a tall person or a short person. Those are just identifying features. And then identities like I'm a teacher, or I'm a healer, or I'm a guide. These are all just identities based off of patterns. And then there's those who feel superior because of the path that they're on. I'm on the higher path than you. I'm a seer. I'm a, whatever. I was calling myself a speaker of the universe for a while there, but we're all speakers of the universe. When you think about it, when you truly sit back and you understand, we're all speakers of the universe. That's the only thing that's speaking. That's the only thing that's translating any of this sound. So, instead of dissolving the ego, most people just give it a more spiritual identity. And that's something I've been seeing a lot of, and I've been accused of this a lot. And the thing is, whatever, I'm not perfect. I don't ever want to claim to be perfect. I'm sure I have my ego sides. This is just how life works. I'm working with myself. But it's just such an interesting topic. Because when I started thinking about this topic for this episode, I was brainstorming some things, and a lot of what was coming up, again, like I said, I called myself the guide. People have said that I'm a healer, but I believe we're all healing ourselves. And we'll get into that too, because there's nothing even to be healed. It's just a story we tell ourselves to give ourselves something to do. But we'll get to that. So the identity of being awakened is something that's really, really big. You'll find like people who call themselves an awakened one, more awakened than others. I'm awakened ends up becoming a label. I'm awakened. I'm the awakened one. It's like, okay, so you're awakened. It's like, yeah. Well, what if I said you're not? Now you're going to sit there and try and defend it. If somebody disagrees with you, like, hey, yeah, you're not awake. You're like, yeah, I am. Well, who's defending? The ego? It's something to think about. You're no longer exploring when you're protecting an identity. You're no longer learning. You're no longer growing. You've now retreated, and you're building a set of armor again. A new set of armor that you're going to wear and try and protect who you think you are. Just because of some experiences that you've had. So the moment you become someone, this is a really cool one. The moment you become someone, you start protecting that identity. The moment you become someone, you start protecting that identity. Just be here. Be in the moment as you are. You don't need to become anything. You already are. Just be. And this will put us into the trap of endless healing, which is something I want to talk about. So the idea that we are always fixing ourselves, always working on ourselves, and always healing ourselves, but never actually arriving. This is the identity of I'm not there yet, which is another ego trip. You're already here. You're already here. You're like, oh, no, money, food, friends, love. These are all attachments. I totally understand there are certain things that keep us alive, all that type of stuff. But the ego loves the idea that you're one step away, that it's right around the corner, that it's next year, that it's tomorrow, that it's next month. Maybe it's the next person you date. Maybe it's the next shirt you try on. Maybe it's the next job you get. The ego loves the idea that you're just one step away. You're right there. You're almost there. You're reaching for something. This is part of the ego trip. So this stirs up the question, what does quote unquote real spirituality even feel like? What even is that? And I got some notes, which is really interesting. So less identity, less identifying, meaning when you walk into a room, you're you. You don't need to adopt any identities. If somebody calls you like, hey, you're such a great teacher, you can say thank you. And they ask who you are, I am me. You can use your labels if you like oh, I'm a teacher. I teach or I create content online. It depends on how you're presenting yourself in the moment. Spirituality is less of the need to prove anything. You have nothing to prove. To who? To what? Why? Why? There's nothing to prove to anyone. Not even yourself. Just be. Stop stressing yourself out so much. Just take a deep breath of complete rest. That deep breath of just it's okay. You're putting so much pressure on yourself by thinking you need to prove things. Relax. Less judgment is part of spirituality. Judgment is a very egoic practice. The thing is, when you walk into a room and instead of judging the things, you're just going to start experiencing the things. So maybe you walk into a room, there's a weird person. That's a judgment, but whatever, we're all weird. You walk in, there's somebody spinning on their head without pants on. Okay, what a weird thing. That's what? Ew. That's strange. That's judgment, what I just did. Context, of course. If that's not the right place and time, hey, don't do that. But my initial instinct would be, I walk in the room, that's happening. I go, oh, whoa. Okay, this is a thing. Is this where I want to be? I kind of just sit there and is this an experience that feels aligned with me? If I'm alright, whatever, sure. If I'm a little uncomfortable, I just step out. No biggie. I don't need to apply judgment to that. It's just my experience. I don't need to judge their experience. They're just being them. Less judgment. More presence is going to be something you experience. So presence is out of the mind. So it's like, I was talking to a friend today, which is really cool. And he had mentioned that presence, I really like this explanation, is like when you're talking and I'm here listening to you and not in my own head, like trying to get something or trying to think of something or do something. I'm here with you listening to what you're saying. Presence is like that. More of that. Everywhere, all the time, instead of distracted by your mind, your thoughts, your judgments, your doubts, your fears. Like these things, they don't have the hold over you. You slowly begin to let them go. That is spiritual practice. That is the spiritual practice. I say the. Letting go. Letting go. You're holding on to a lot of things. And then more openness is another part of spirituality. So being open. Being open. Curious. Understanding. You sit with the moment, you're like, oh, maybe I disagree with this person. Let's hear why. You think what you think. Instead of me feeling like I need to defeat or defend myself, let's hear what you think. You know what? Let's see. Let's sit down and listen. And then if there's another open presence in front of you that is willing to listen to your perspective, it's a great constructive conversation where you're both learning to understand each other. So real, quote-unquote, spirituality is quieter than the ego is comfortable with. Which means in that silence that you sit back, without the judgment, the fear, the narrations, the identities, without that all in the way, it's very peaceful. It's very blissful, very quiet. Less fluxes in the ether. And in that silence, a lot of things happen. So how do you even go about letting go of a spiritual identity? Or if you find yourself in your spiritual identity, your spiritual ego, which is okay, it's normal, it's part of the process, I think. What do you do? Well, remember, you don't need to be spiritual. You don't need to be awake. In fact, you don't even need to be anything. Just awareness. Just sit as you are without all that distraction. And the deeper you go into this, the less there is to hold on to. So you're going to have to practice letting go. If you haven't tried that, if you haven't learned to let go, I will make an episode on what is letting go, how to actively do it in your life. I'm not just talking about physically letting go of things. Sometimes that is part of the practice that people find valuable. However, it's more about letting go inside. We'll dive into that. And I want to really tie it in with this. The ego, this is really cool. The ego wants to become something. But awareness doesn't need to be anything. Awareness just is you. You just are. You don't need to be anything. The ego wants to be something, to become something. But your awareness doesn't need to be anything. It just is. It's already enough. So be careful. Because the ego doesn't mind you waking up as long as it gets to come with you. The letting go of this ego is like, it'll feel like an attack on yourself. Because it is. It can feel like that, because yourself, the you that you identify as, even the spiritual you, especially the spiritual you, is going to have a really hard time letting go of the fact that it's not special. And that's what makes you special. But that's the ego getting hit and then comforted, There's nothing that you need to do to be special. You just are you. You're the only you that will ever exist. Ever. So go live the life. Go live life. Just let it just go. Judgments, doubts, fears, all the things you're told you need to do, the job you're told you have to get, the money you say that you're told you need to earn. Like all these things, like the needs. it's different when you let go. When you look at it from the side of, these are just experiences to have in this human experience. And any experience that you want to have, any desire, requires pain. You need to become a different version of yourself to attain, quote unquote, that desire. However, who you are doesn't desire, and it doesn't need desire. It is everything. It's already fine. It's content. You can sit in that peace, that completely fine peace that doesn't need, that can just be in love with whatever's in front of it. Just be happy, good, at peace with whatever it's doing. You direct that version of yourself down a path of pain toward a fun experience that you want this quote-unquote human to experience, this ego to experience. Your relationship with this life, with your life, is completely up to you. By letting go, you're able to free yourself. You're really able to free yourself. Let go of this spiritual identity, pagan spiritual identity. Like, there's a lot of them that think they're better. I heard one pagan talk about how pagans are all broke. Like, they were proud to say that. And I think that's very sad to project onto people. It's people are people, how they have learned to be. That sounds hilarious to say out loud. They just, people are people that they've learned to be. However, they just let go of the desire to be special, be better, be superior, to become something of a higher caliber. We're all equals in this game of life. There's nobody that is better than anyone else here. Anyone who thinks they're better, it is your ego. If you're a spiritual person, you're like, well, I'm God incarnate on this planet. Yeah, that's ego too. Yeah, we get it. We're all here. You're here. Experience this. Be human. Have fun. There's whatever judgment you apply to the outside world or to yourself is an egoic experience. It's an ego. And you're not killing your ego. In fact, if you're going to find people who are the closest to killing their ego, you're not going to find them around people. They're probably out in the woods meditating at the top of the Himalaya mountains. Alright? These are completely detached beings who are barely human. It's very interesting. It's a very cool experience. But what do we do with this? If you've made it to the end of this video, let me know. Have you experienced spiritual ego? Have you experienced going through your spiritual ego? Are you currently going through a spiritual ego and having a rough time dealing with that? Because it's normal. Because if you're going through your spiritual ego, you feel attacked. And that's okay, because it's just pointing you to the parts of yourself that you're still identifying with. Just let go. No need to defend yourself, whatever. People can think whatever they want. This spiritual world is coming into it and then going through it, experiencing it, and seeing it as just another label is very interesting, because you don't need to be spiritual. You don't need to be awake. You don't need to go travel the world and live in a trailer. You don't need to do all these crazy things. You can literally stay in your hometown. Develop really strong relationships with your family, some friends. Love your job, whatever. Get a dog. Live on a farm, whatever. Your life is yours. But you do not have to do what everybody's telling you to do. You don't have to be who everybody told you have to be. You don't have to live the way everyone told you have to live. You don't even have to eat the way people tell you have to eat. Is that an interesting thing? It's literally you and your human experience and how you decide to interact with it. So let go of this spiritual ego. I hope that somebody out there sees this with a spiritual ego, gets a little triggered, starts making some clips of this video and says, you hear what this guy's saying? That'd be great. I'd love that. That sounds wonderful. Let's do it. Alright, let's go. Because we gotta let this spiritual ego thing go. I know it's just part of the it's just part of the human experience. It's gonna be here. The ego is always here. I'm always learning to deal with it, always learning to evolve with it, to grow with it, to love it. And I'm okay with that. I got one too. I'm learning to manage him and love him and just sit with him and just be with him. Alright? He's a cool guy. Sometimes. He's a little weird. But we all are. Thank you for tuning in today, too. If you haven't already, don't forget to go down to the description of this video. If you're on Spotify, it's on YouTube. You'll see it on the YouTube description. And join my email list. I send out an email every Sunday. It's a personal message from me. I also have updates on my art, or if I make music, or we're down to the last 20 copies of my book. So I have that on there. I have updates, pre-orders, so you'll be able to see things before they drop publicly. And it's every Sunday. So I send these out every Sunday with a deeper message as well involved. And also the updates on the podcast episodes. So it's pretty much the bulletin board email with a personal message from me. So if you want to join that, it is linked down below. You can also find it at my website, davidstore.com, which you'll find linked below as well. And yeah, I feel like we clicked it all there. Thanks for sticking out to the end. Heck yeah, look at you. I see you. I appreciate you. If you made it to the end, say, hey Dave, I made it, with 2 thumbs up with whatever the rest of your comment is, so I can know. Because it's a fun little way. It's a little code for me to know if you made it to the end. You know, it's a little sneaky thing. So tricked ya. I'm just kidding. I don't know. With all that said, thank you again. And as always, stay awesome. All love.